welcome to another episode of the DadCast. This week we're doing 2 episodes of the DadCast this week. Kind of like what I said in Tuesday's episode of the DadCast, which I'm actually recording today on Tuesday. Some weeks I'm going to have 2 of them. Like, one will be like a news recap where I talk about like the latest news going about in video game and the toy world, mostly video games. And then another podcast that will be about interesting things, maybe a long form talking about something big in the news of the video game world, or maybe something that piques my own interest. And this week it's something that piques my own interest for the second DadCast, and I'm talking about retro game collecting. I mean, that's kind of what this channel is based around. We do gameplays of older games, some new releases, but a lot of older games. We do N64, GameCube, Dreamcast, Xbox 360, PS3, PS2, Xbox era games. Sometimes we do the remasters. Sometimes we do the original ones like Gears of War 2 and 3. So it's just one of those kind of fun things that we do on this channel. We love doing, and by we I mean me, because it's a solo operation. My boys help me out, but yeah. So I wanted to talk about retro game collecting, and one of the first things I wanted to talk about, I'm going to do a quick plug for a local retro shop, and I'm going to get into more about where you can find retro games there. But picked up War Gods for the N64. It's one of the games I needed. I really should have a running total, so when I do these things, I'm like, oh, we're at game number blah blah blah. Maybe I'll put that in here in the editing. But picked up War Games, already cleaned it, already labeled it. That's a reference to my How to Clean N64 games. I picked up from a local shop down here in the Richmond area. The Link to the Past, them, like Tech Exchange, which I featured in another video. They do a lot of retro games. This one does some retro toys as well. And it's a great place to go. The 2 gentlemen, I wish I would have got their names. I know one's the owner. I've been to the shop a couple times since I moved to the Richmond area, and just the friendliest, nicest people. I bought one game there, unfortunately, because really, for what I was looking at for my collections, that was like one of the only things they. Actually, let me get this better in frame. It's one of the only things they actually had in stock that I was looking for. So, I mean, there was plenty of stuff I could have bought there, but I'm trying to focus mostly on my N64 collection and then my Japanese GameCube collection, which kind of hard to find at secondhand shops in the States. But no, the staff there, like I said, one of the gentlemen was the owner. They might have both been co-owners. I don't know the ownership structure there. One thing I do plan to do eventually is do like an in-depth thing on the retro gaming scene in the Richmond area, so kind of like a documentary style there. So I'll get more info there, but I'm going to link their Instagram and their Facebook in the description below if you want to check them out. I don't think they do take online orders. I think you got to go in person. So if you're in the Central Virginia area, definitely a cool place to stop by. Like I said, I was chatting with the 2 guys working there. We were talking video games, modern and retro. We were talking wrestling because they're wrestling fans. In fact, it was the day of the Bash at Berlin. It was this past Saturday. And we were just talking about the event. And it was kind of funny because they were saying like the previous Saturday was kind of dead and they had the pay-per-view on in the store. But as soon as it started, they were like swamped the entire time the pay-per-view was on. So they didn't really get to watch most of it. So I didn't spoil anything for them. But I said it was an awesome pay-per-view to go back and watch. And it is an awesome pay-per-view. If you're a wrestling fan, check it out. But yeah, super friendly guys. I've been in there 3 or 4 times since moving to the Richmond area. And every time I go in there and I chat with them, they're just all friendly and inviting. And just a great place to go. Especially like, I do like those small little stores like that where the employees just want to chat with you about the hobby. Here it's retro games. When I used to live up north, there was a couple comic shops I went to, and I'd go in, maybe not even buy anything because there was nothing there that I wanted to get, but I'd be there for like 30, 40 minutes just chatting with the guys running the shops. And there's also an old used record store when I was in high school, same thing. Generally, I bought something there because there was like a new CD coming out or a new game because they did retro and they did modern stuff. But yeah, I'd go in there and I'd chat with the owners and the employees, and it's always fun to be in those kind of shops because you're kind of with your people and you're just chatting about your hobbies, and it's always just fun. I cannot say enough nice things about shops like that, especially the shop, The Link to the Past. Those guys are great. Again, if you're in the Richmond area, I'll link it below. They're in Chesterfield off Iron Bridge Road. I'll link their Facebook and everything below. Check them out. Great shop. Cannot say enough nice things about them. And generally speaking, because they are right off the same road as my mother-in-law, when we go visit there, if they're open, depending on what time we're going to my mother-in-law's, I always stop by and check out their section to see if they got anything new in. But yeah, so like I said, this week's all about retro collecting. And it's one of those things, like I just want to talk about my want to collect retro video games, because as you can see behind me, you know, I've got the Nintendo collection back there, but you'll see I got figures and the like. There's a lot more figures over there and over there, mostly wrestling figures. But collecting, it's a fun hobby. It's usually something you kind of really get into when you're older, because you got the money to spend. But it generally starts when you're young. For me, it was baseball and football cards, because I grew up in the 90s. And that's what you collected. You bought packs of baseball cards, and it was always kind of fun to see what you would get. And you would trade them with your friends. You would trade them in the shops to get stuff that you needed for your collection, and so on. And then it kind of evolves when you get older. You start collecting more nostalgic things from your youth that make you feel young again, that make you feel happy. Because I will say this, like playing my N64 games, my Super Nintendo games, Dreamcast games, the like, makes me happy. Just when I want to get a quick pick-me-up, it makes me happy. And that's generally why we collect. Same with action figures. It's mostly just wrestling figures now. There are some Ninja Turtles, Ghostbusters. There's some more expensive Japanese imports of some of my favorite brands, as you can see. Damn it, I'm always bad at this. The Masters of the Universe movie, plus Conan figures, plus cartoon Masters of the Universe figures right down there. Again, childhood nostalgia just makes me smile when I look at them, kind of thing like that. And that's kind of why we collect. At least that's why I collect. I think that's why a lot of people collect, at least like the collectors that I talk to a lot, whether I'm talking to them at conventions or smaller shops or on the internet, sometimes in the comments here on my videos or Twitter, Instagram, things like that. We just kind of, it just makes us happy, kind of thing like that. So, I mean, that's why we collect. It's always fun. For me, it's a nostalgia trip back to the 80s and early 90s, when life was simple, when we didn't have bills, when all our responsibility was to do our homework. So I think that's the nostalgia factor of why we do it. So, and again, I'll probably say this at the end of the video, but let me know at the bottom in the comments what you collect, why you collect it, how does it make you feel, how does it make you feel happy, and things like that. So again, my advice, if you want to collect things, collect what you love, because yeah, some things will go up in value, some things will go down in value. If you're collecting to try to turn a profit to flip things, you might be collecting for a long time without seeing any kind of profit. It's really difficult to kind of guess these kind of things. Like when I started collecting my N64 collection, I think that was at the peak for a lot of games. So I steered away from the high price games. I started with mainly the sports games, the common games, the ones that were very inexpensive to collect. And then now we're a few years into the collection, and prices have started to come down on N64 games. So that means I've bought some more expensive ones. You probably can't see it, but Resident Evil 2 being one of them. It's not facing forward, but Harvest Moon. Those are a couple games that I picked up pretty, well, not cheap, but cheaper than what they were when I started collecting. So that's kind of the way to do it, because if you're trying to collect to turn a profit, these markets, because there's real no set market on it, because no one knows how many copies of Zelda there are, how many copies of certain games there are. So I mean, it could be peaked and you buy it at its highest, and then it starts to come down in price because either the demand's not there or there's more supply because more people are selling those higher price games. So it's one of those things, if you try to like game collecting, figure collecting, try to do it for profit, it might bite you in the butt. If you get some like newer things and you sell them before they go on sale, or you pre-ordered something, it sells out and you resell it, you might turn a profit that way. But again, it's one of those, there's no there's no real telling on what's going to be valuable and what's not going to be valuable. I mean, everyone thinks to the original Star Wars figures, and I remember the boom of collecting when the Power of Force figures came out, and everyone was buying them up. Like the Princess Leia figure was the hardest one to come by, and I was kind of pissed because I was a kid and I wanted to play with. So I was kind of thinking investor strategy. I would usually buy 2 of each figure from that first like 2 or 3 waves. I'd buy 1 to play with and open and 1 to keep, because I was thinking they were going to be like the original Star Wars figures, and like by the time I was in college I could sell them for hundreds of dollars and things like that, which the exact opposite happened. By the time I was in college, they were selling for less than what they originally did at retail. Luckily, I sold mine kind of at a peak when I got rid of my in-box collection. I sold them on eBay and actually turned quite a profit on those, and that was just pure luck. It was, I needed room, and I was just like, I'm not collecting figures anymore, because I was, not playing with toys anymore. I was high school age, and collecting figures kind of nerdy, and I did not want to be seen as nerdy, so I got rid of my in-box figures collecting. So I lucked out there with a profit. Had I held on to them as long as I was originally planning to and then selling them, I would have lost money on it. So that's just the kind of thing. It's a lot like stocks, but a lot harder to predict than stocks. So that's why I say, if you're going into collecting, collect stuff you love and that you're gonna appreciate and things like that. And going into that, I always say don't go by price charts of what things are selling for to determine the value of a game. Because you go on these price charting websites, they'll give you a value because they do aggregate and they collect data and things like that. So they're not totally bogus. But as far as in the moment, that moment of your purchase, if you're looking online, you're going to stores, what I do and what I recommend is go on eBay and Mercari and check the sold, look for what you're looking for, click the sold tab, and see what they're actually selling for, because something could be worth $100, but if it's only selling for $75 to $80, then it's worth $75 to $80, because the value of an item is only what someone's willing to pay. So that's kind of, I've got a checklist that I do for my shopping for the N64 collection. And what I do is I've got the game listed, got them all in alphabetical order with a checkbox. So when I get them, I just click check in my Google Docs. But I also have like a price range of what I feel it's worth. So, and that's just me going on eBay and Mercari and looking up the games and just kind of averaging it out. Okay, the lowest price it sold for was like $50. The highest price it was sold for was about $75. So generally speaking, I'll put like $55 to $75 for a price range. But if I see like a lot selling for, let's say, $60, like the vast majority are selling for $60, then I put $60 down as the price that I'm looking for. That's what I feel the value is, because that's what it's averaging out in its sales. So that would be my advice here. It's a little more legwork than just looking something up on a price charting site. But generally speaking, if you do that, you'll be more in tune to what it's worth, and you'll sniff out a deal when you see it on eBay or Mercari. You won't fall for, well, price chart, it said it's worth 100 and this one's selling for 95. I'll just buy that now. Whereas opposed to, you're like, okay, well, this one's selling for 95. It's worth 100 on price chart. But I've already done the research. I've already looked it up. And I see that most of the time it's selling for $70. So I'm not going to pay that 95. I'll keep looking for a $75 range game. And I mean, that's just my advice for collecting anything, be it games, figures. Just kind of average it out. Do the research on your own, because that way you're more likely to find a deal and not settle for something that might be a little overpriced. So there is that going on. And now we're going to talk about what kind of, mostly game collecting, but I'll talk about figures as well, as far as like collecting where they're sealed, complete in box, open, like how you should be collecting these things. Alrighty, so got a couple examples to show you guys from my collection. So when it comes to kind of like action figures and video games, my personal outlook for it is these things are kind of meant to be played with. Video games, definitely meant to be played. I mean, there's really nothing special about the packaging other than just trying to convey to you the what the game is and what you're getting for your money, so you can play. Action figures, especially nowadays, there's this market for kids and there's this market for adult collectors. So that one's kind of a gray area, in box, out of box kind of thing. But so I'm going to touch on action figures first, and then I'll talk about video games. So, for instance, like right here, 2 examples. We got Shawn Michaels Ultimate Edition and a Shawn Michaels Retro Superstars. He's in his 80s gear, part of the Rockers. Really cool arcade style boxing to look like the old retro game. Even the back card is like the bio you would see on the retro arcade game, the WWE Superstars, or I'm sorry, WWF Superstars video game. So this is a really cool packaging. So I left this sealed in box for a couple reasons. First reason, really cool packaging. I just like the way this is displayed and done. Jada has done a similar thing with their Street Fighter figures, where the box is looking like an arcade and the window to see the figure is the screen for the arcade, everything like that. So just a really cool box display. And I wanted to display it in the box. Like, I want to keep this box and things like that. And also, the Shawn Michaels is in it because, one, I have an ton of Shawn Michaels figures. Like, I have a whole shelf in one of my detolfs dedicated to just Shawn Michaels and Click figures, and then spread out throughout my collection are other Shawn Michaels figures. So I don't really need to open this one. And plus, he's in his Rockers gear. His partner from them, Marty Jannetty, is on the outs with WWE and does not have a Legends contract. So we don't have any Marty Jannetty Rockers figures. Like, they did do a 2-pack back in the day, which I wish I would have bought. I had the opportunity to buy it, and I didn't buy it because I wasn't collecting. That 2-pack goes for well over $200 now. So it's kind of like having a Marty Jannetty or a Rocker Shawn Michaels without Marty Jannetty. It's kind of weird. So it's like, no brainer. I'm going to keep this in the cool box and display it. If you're wondering if this is worth anything, last time I looked it up, I think it's like $20, and that was, I think the retail for this was like $25. I paid less than that because I actually got it off like GameStop.com or Amazon for, I think, like on clearance for like $10-15. So it's technically worth more than what I paid for it, but it's actually worth less than retail. So again, if I would have bought this because, like, oh, this is going to go up in value, that would have been a crapshoot, and I would have at least lost now. I mean, maybe one day it'd be worth more. And then, of course, like I said, I've got a lot of open Shawn Michaels figures. This one, I just have him kind of like posed in a cocky pose with the WWE title, which is kind of like I do with a lot of my figures. Some of them just stand straight up in the background of the figures. Others are posed in different poses. Because I've got 2 of these Shawn Michaels, and so one, he's standing up doing his like muscle pose, and I got Triple H behind him about to do the crotch chop, and then Chyna behind next to him holding the European WWE title, because this is a DX Shawn Michaels, so kind of like that. And I've got Hollywood Hogan playing the guitar on the NWO title and various other poses, but then, like I said, some are just very vanilla standing poses. Generally speaking, at least like one of each of my figures that I have multiples of are doing some sort of like signature pose, and that's how I display them. So that's why I open them, because it condenses the space, because I could probably on one detail fit 4, maybe 5 of these boxes, as opposed to just kind of looking at my shelves. I've probably got 15 to 20 figures on one detail, maybe more, so you can fit a lot more in your collection. You don't run out of space as quickly when you open the figures. And again, especially in the wrestling collecting world, sealed in box isn't that much more valuable than a complete one when you're talking about the rarer older figures. If you have all the accessories, all the fists, all the belts, anything that comes with it, you're not losing much value if you open it as opposed to if you keep it sealed in package. Now, sometimes sealed in packages for the older ones, like the LJNs, the Hasbros, those are worth way more because they're older and rarer. But like the Mattels, I've noticed, like with my collection, having it in box and having it out of box doesn't make much of a difference as far as price goes on most of them. So it's like, open them up, display them, take some pictures of them, have fun with them. So that's kind of like my thought on figure collecting, is kind of collect it how you want, but kind of meant to be played with and displayed and have fun with. So do that. Also, side note to figure collecting, I, as a rule, only collect the figures that are intended for adult collectors, like your $20 to $25 elites or your $32, I think now, ultimates, because those are meant for people like me, people who grew up wrestling. I love them. Like, you can buy them for kids and play with them. I bought many elites for Sean and a few ultimates for Sean growing up that he would play with his toys. In fact, Bowie now has taken possession of several of Sean's old WWE figures. So Bowie's got a mix of basics and elites and a couple ultimates in there. In fact, he's got a pretty... I bought it for Sean, and this was before I was collecting a CM Punk elite figure where he's in the his Money in the Bank 2011 gear for Chicago. And that's all beat to hell. It's loose joints and everything like that. It just cracks me up because that figure is actually worth quite a bit of money these days. Though it might go down because we're getting an ultimate version of that CM Punk. But it's just kind of funny to me that Bowie has this. I think last I looked, that figure was going for well over $100. It's just funny to me. He's got a $100 figure that he plays with and throws around. But yeah, I don't collect. I'll buy a basic every once in a while if it's the only figure that exists for that particular wrestler. Like I've got a basic, what's his name? Dexter Lumis, because I really like Dexter Lumis, and the only figure that he has currently is a basic figure. So I've got a basic figure of him, and I've got a basic Macho Man, but that's a custom a friend made for me. I think those are like the only base. Oh, I do have one basic Shawn Michaels still in package. It's from Series 100. It's the Chase figure. Maybe I should have used that as my example. But I have that still in package because cool design for the box, cool looking Shawn Michaels figure, and it was a special edition kind of thing. But yeah, as a rule, I don't collect any figures that are meant for kids to play with because as a former kid who played with action figures, I'd get really upset when I couldn't find the rarer figures because they were being hoarded by collectors and not by kids who get them and play with them. So yeah, I tend to steer away from those kind of figures as far as my collection. Like I'll get one or two every once in a while for my collection, just for, like I said, a niche kind of thing, like a wrestler who only has the one figure, things like that. But I tend to leave those for, the kids to play with, because don't collect toys that kids are going to play with. Collect the adult collectible figures, the $20 and up figures. That's always been kind of my thought process. So moving on to video games, we got a few examples here. Like I already showed you that I got from The Link to the Past, just buying the cart. This is the least expensive way to go when it comes to retro collecting, because a lot of most carts, not all, some are rare games, but pretty abundant. You can find them at a lot of yard sales and things like that. I'm going to cover where to buy retro games too, but you can find these almost anywhere that sells like used old things, and pretty easy to find. So not that hard. Plus, already open, you clean them. Check my cleaning video below. I'll put that in the end card. And ready to play. Even if you're like me, you're going for a whole collection, I am not going to complete all those games. I am going to at least play all of them, at least for 5 minutes, and see what I like. Because some games that I might not have even heard of before I started this collection, I might really enjoy. And other games that I heard of but passed on, because I hear War Gods is pretty good. I'm going to check that out. Midway, in this era, Midway kind of had some bangers out there. So I'm going to give this game a try and see if I like it, see if I play it. Because again, video games are meant to be played. The next tier up, we got the complete inbox. A lot of times for these games, most of my complete inbox games are Japanese games. Again, games are meant to be played, but the problem with something like Final Fantasy VI, I can't read any of that. I've done my darndest to study Japanese, and I do okay, but it's very simple words that I know. So trying to play an RPG at my understanding is a bit difficult. But yeah, so this is a complete inbox Final Fantasy. Got the inner box, we got the manual, we got the cart. Like I said, as far as complete inbox games go, most of my collection is and probably will always be Japanese games. A couple reasons again. Games are meant to be played, but I'm not really going to play a lot of these games because I don't speak the language. I don't read the language, so it makes it difficult. Plus, this kind of makes for a cool display piece. Like you see my Nintendo shelf back there. You see Final Fantasy 1 up there. You see Chrono Trigger right there. Custom Robo. Is that 1 or 2? I can't tell. I think it's Custom Robo 1 right there. And this goes back on that shelf. And just cool little display place for a game that I'm not going to play. And that way I can, set them up so you can see them displayed. And you see all the artwork. Where, on the game, you just see a small little bit of the artwork on the label. But on the box, it's blown up. It's bigger. It's a lot cooler to look at. So when you got the complete box, it looks really nice in your collection. So kind of mostly Japanese games that I'll have that way because I won't be playing a lot of them simply because of the language barrier. So now the next level is sealed games. And you're like, Josh, games are meant to be played. Why do you have a sealed game? I have a sealed game of WCW Backstage Assault for a couple reasons. One, I was at a video game swap meet, and this is a game I didn't own yet. It wasn't a part of the collection. And I asked the guy how much he was selling it for, because I was like, you know what? I'll get this sealed because I'm never going to play it because it's a garbage game. I will get an open copy eventually just so I can say I played all the N64 games released in the U.S., but it's not a game that I know for a fact because actually, technically I have played it. I played it back in the day. So I guess I don't need an open copy. It's a terrible game. So I don't need an open copy to put in my N64 in my current collection to play. And this was sealed, and the guy did it for like $15-20. And not that I expect this to be valuable at any point, but I just thought it was kind of cool to add a sealed game to my collection, even though it's not what I'm collecting for. And that would be kind of the way I'd go about collecting sealed games. Is if it was a terrible game that I know I'm not going to enjoy or play, something like Superman 64, just the dredges of the N64 collection, or if it's a game I own open and I get a chance to buy a pretty affordable copy sealed, or if it's a game that I really love and I can get it sealed. Like for right now, on a Japanese website that I go to, there's a sealed copy of Eternal Darkness for the GameCube, the Japanese version. I own the American version. I've played the American version. I love the American version. So to buy a sealed copy at original MSRP, mind you, would be kind of cool to own and have it in my collection. I'm still hemming and hawing on that. I don't know if I'm going to do it, but that would be why I would buy a sealed game, because it's either just a really bad game that I'm never going to play and I got it at a deal, a la WCW Backstage Assault, or if it's a game I already own and I just feel it'd be cool to add a sealed copy to my collection. Like right now, what you see playing on in the background, Ocarina of Time, that's actually the Japanese cart that I got playing right now. But if I were to get that sealed US or Japanese version or complete in box for either one, that'd be cool to add to the collection. I already got it where I can play it, so I don't need it open to play, and I got a copy of it to add to the collection. That would be where I would do something like that. People who only collect sealed video games, I'm not passing judgment on them. I just find it as like, don't you want to play some of these games, especially like the cool ones? I get like if you're going for a complete collection and it's again WCW Backstage Assault, like yeah, leave that sealed if you got that sealed. But if it's like Ocarina of Time or Final Fantasy 7, some of these really cool fun games to play, open them and play them. But I totally get people who just want this, who don't intend to play, but it's a reminiscent kind of thing, and they just want a complete collection, almost like they have their own game store. They just have them sitting on the shelf. They could have them sitting like this, stacked, sitting like this. Maybe they have enough space to have them front facing kind of thing, or they've got tiered shelving. That's cool way to collect. But again, video games, I like playing them, so I like to open the games. I don't have too many sealed copies of the games, which kind of brings me to a dilemma. I've already pre-ordered Marvel vs. Capcom Collection digitally, and I've got it pre-ordered physically. Since I'm getting it digitally, I might just leave my physical copy sealed because I'm not going to play the disc because I've got it digitally. And that was a great timing for the white light to come from the TV. Just boom, hit me right there. So that one I might leave sealed, and I might buy a PS4 copy and leave it sealed. I don't know. That's a weird gray area for me because I definitely, like I said, I definitely want a physical and digital copy in case they take it away again. Which I think if I've got it downloaded, I can't have it removed from my system if it gets delicensed. So there's that. But yeah, it's just one of those things I'm hedging my bets. I will have I will have a digital, and I'll have another physical copy. So again, those are just the different ways to collect. I'm a big opener. Kind of like how Matt Cardona, not Zach Ryder, always says with his action figure collection, let him breathe. Though I know he makes a lot of collectors anxious because he'll buy these rare, expensive, mint in box figures and then just open them. And with a lot of those figures, like the Star Wars ones he buys, the wrestling figures he buys, I'm talking about like vintage, like 70s, 80s, early 90s toys, and he opens them. I know that gives a lot of collectors anxiety because, like, oh my God, you've decreased the value of that thing by X number of things. But if I'm an inbox collector and I own that figure, I'm like, yeah, Matt, open it, because now there's one less sealed one in the wild that just kind of makes your value go up. But it's to each their own. Me personally, if I found, for instance, over hanging up by my wrestling figures, I have a Hasbro Shawn Michaels and a Hasbro Roddy Piper mint in box. I do have them open as well that I picked up in my collecting of that line. But yeah, I would never, even if I didn't have loose versions of those figures, I wouldn't even dream of opening those things. Just like I also have the Jack Specific Series 1 WWF, Superstars that I collected in package as a nostalgia thing. Again, I also have them opened. But even if I didn't have them open, I'd still leave those sealed in box for the nostalgia factor because I like the packaging and the look. That packaging kind of takes me back to being a kid. Up until Bowie got into Ghostbusters, the re-release of the Kenner Ghostbuster, real Ghostbusters figure, I had a set open to display, and then I had a set in package. Because again, the packaging was so nostalgic to me. I remember seeing that in stores for the first time, just seeing that package, and I was 6 again. It was just like, oh my gosh, I love this. So I kept one in the box and kept one open for display. Well, Bowie gets into those figures, or he randomly found the real Ghostbusters on YouTube and just loved it, and he saw my toys and wanted to play with them. So I gave him the open set, and then I opened the in-box set, and those became my display ones because I wanted it open and displayed. I didn't necessarily want them in the package. If I could only have one of each, so I was like, I'll just have these open. So that's what I did. And Bowie has fun playing with them, and my display ones though I can almost never keep displayed because I have them displayed with the Firehouse and everything. But I actually got the Firehouse at the same swap meet. I got a great deal on the Firehouse too. But Bowie plays with them while they're up here. Luckily, he doesn't play with them as hard as he plays with his downstairs. So there's no paint chips and they still look nice. Again, not collecting for value, collecting for display. And I want it to have a nice display. So I don't want it all paint chips and things like that. But that brings me to the next point, like how to collect. Like, what should you look for in a figure? And initially, when I would buy loose retro figures, I would look for the most pristine version of that figure because I wanted to look really nice in my collection. But watching Dan Larson from then Toy Galaxy, now Secret Galaxy, he was talking about his Boba set, which is his collection of vintage Star Wars Boba Fett figures, which is now, I think, last counting, like above 600, which is pretty awesome. In fact, he's going to be at a convention this fall in New Hampshire where he's going to bring the whole Boba set out and on display at the convention. And if it wasn't like an 8-hour drive away from me, I'd be very tempted to go. In fact, I still might go. I might check my calendar to see what it is. I might go because I want to see the Boba set alive in person. I think it'd be cool. But he was talking about the Boba set because people will send him their own Boba Fett. So he's bought some of these Boba Fetts, and some people have mailed their extras in, or they find them cheap at a convention or something like that, and they send it into him. In fact, I still have my childhood Boba Fett, and I thought about sending it into Dan, but Bowie claimed it. Bowie stole Boba Fett off my small little LucasArts shelf, which is mostly Indiana Jones figures and a select few Star Wars figures. But he stole it off the shelf and is keeping it. So, Dan, if by chance you're watching this video, thank you for watching. I love Secret Galaxy. I love your personal channel where you put up your old toy reviews because those are my favorite reviews. you lost out on a Boba Fett because a 3-year-old stole it. I'm sorry. Them's the breaks, I guess. But yeah, so he was talking about the Boba Fett, and when he'd get them, people would apologize for the condition of some of them. But he was talking about, no, he liked, like with a lot of the vintage toys, especially something like the Boba Fett, he likes that a lot of them are played with and show signs of wear and things like that, because it shows that they were really loved by somebody at some point and not just bought by a collector and just kept behind a glass case or something like that. So that kind of got me thinking with some of my older figures that I was collecting, like the big rubber wrestlers from LJN, the 90s Hasbros, the late 90s Jakks Pacific figures. For my collection, I was like, I don't need the most pristine version of that. Let me just find one that, if it has an action figure, the action feature, that feature works, and it doesn't look too terrible. Though my Macho Man LJN is missing his nose. I do need to upgrade that to where it actually has a nose. Some kid bit it off. That's a funny thing you'll find if you ever start collecting the LJNs. A lot of teeth marks in them. A lot of people gave those to babies as chew toys, I guess, or dogs as chew toys. But yeah, so I stopped stressing about having those figures as mint as possible and just finding acceptable ones that I thought were in decent condition to display. And that has, I think that has worked out better for me as a collector, because I'm paying less money for those. Because if there's paint chips and, you know, scars on the figures, battle damage, mind you, they're cheaper. So since I'm not collecting them for value, I'm collecting to look at those Hasbros, to look at those Jakks, to look at those LJNs, and think back to a time in my life when I was little and just wrestling was real and all that stuff. Puts a smile on my face. So, and it kind of makes it look like they were my childhood toys, in a sense that my dad didn't accidentally donate all my toys to Goodwill. God, so many Star Wars, Transformers, Voltron, G.I. Joe, Silverhawks. Name the 80s He-Man. Name the 80s cartoon series, and I probably had at least one or two figures from it, either from my parents getting them for me or grandparents or something like that. So those are all gone. Somebody got them from Goodwill long time ago. And who knows, maybe some of the figures that I've collected, maybe some of those Hasbros that I've got were my Hasbros at one time, and I don't even know it. But yeah, so it's kind of like, it looks like my childhood collection, like I was able to save my childhood collection instead of my dad. And the worst part is the box that he kept was a bunch of garbage Fisher-Price toys, and I was just so mad. So mad. But I got over it. I mean, accidents happen. I probably would have sold those at some point anyways, because when I was moving out and taking all that stuff with me, I wasn't collecting at the time, so I probably would have gotten rid of it. But I mean, them's the breaks, as they say, when it comes to collecting. So now, kind of, let's get into, where do you buy your collections from? Well, when we're talking about like action figures, if we're talking modern action figures, you know, your local Walmarts, your Amazons, if you're lucky to be in Canada, Toys R Us, Target, places like that, they'll sell the new figures. Ringside Collectibles is a great place to buy new wrestling figures, the best place to buy. Sometimes you'll pay a little bit extra money, but you're guaranteed, if it's something that you want to get for your collection, if you get it as soon as it goes up on, if you go to the site as soon as they go up on pre-order, you're guaranteed to get it, instead of like shopping through a bunch of Targets and things like that. There's also Big Bad Toy Store, Entertainment Online, or entertainmentearth.com to get your toys. Best place to go for modern action figures, be it, you know, wrestling figures, new G.I. Joes, Marvel Legends. A lot of your Japanese imports you'll find at these those sites. Maybe not Target and Walmart, but Amazon, Big Bad Toy Store, Entertainment Earth. Find those there. Video games, though. Modern video games, of course. Same places I mentioned, including GameStop. Well, GameStop you can get figures at, too. And Best Buys. Best Buys you can get figures at now, too. I forgot about that. So, yeah, so toys, video games, same shops I just mentioned, except for Ringside. Ringside does not sell video games. Neither does Big Bad Toy Stores or Entertainment Earth. Those are just toys. But yeah, so you'll find the modern games there. Now, retro games, retro figures, where places to go? Well, first and foremost, eBay, Mercari, online stores like that, where individuals are selling them, sometimes businesses, but mostly individuals selling them. You can look for them there. And like I said, when you're trying to decide on how much you should pay for that, you can look at price charts, but also kind of look at how much that game, how much that figure has been selling for in the past. Look at the most recent ones, and that'll give you a good idea. So the most recent sales were like, let's say $20 for a figure, and the person you're seeing is selling it for like 35. Offer them 25. You might get like, hey, I've seen these sold for that much. I'll give you 25, and maybe they'll accept it, maybe they won't. But then you just keep looking. Those are great places also to sell if you want to unload some of your collection. Like for me, when it comes to collecting, I don't like to store things. I like my collection out on display. So if I start running out of room and I get something new, I'll generally sell something or a few things. Like I'll go through my collection. Like recently when I redid the lights for my detolfs, I had to pull everything out. So when I was pulling things out, when I was putting things back in from pulling them out, I would look at the figures like, do I really want this anymore? And I would set it aside to think about it. And then I'd redo my shelves and set everything up, and then just kind of look at it as like, yeah, you don't really have a place anymore, but there's more place for new things. And I'd set that aside and put it up on eBay, put it up on Mercari to sell. Like I said, I don't like to store things. I don't like to have things stored in my attic to where I can't see them out. I do have a couple figures there, like my Universal Monsters from NECA and my NECA Back to the Future figures. I do want to set those up somewhere. I just got to find a spot for them right now. And I don't know where that spot is going to be at the moment. So I'm going to figure that out and reset them up. Those are the exceptions to that rule. Everything else, like if I get a new wrestling figure and I'm trying to fit it in one of my displays and it won't fit, I'll just like, what can I get rid of? And that's what I do. Video games, I've not run into that problem yet because those, for the most part, like newer games, I don't mind storing. But yeah, I'll sell some games every once in a while if I accidentally get a double, because what I'll do with Mercari and Mercari and eBay, I'll buy lots. Mostly because you're paying for shipping. I don't want to buy a bunch of individual games and pay a bunch of individual shipping, because that will like drive up the price of what you're buying. So especially when it comes to more inexpensive games, I'll buy lots. Like I'll see a lot that will have, like, let's say it's selling for $40. It's got 4 games I don't have and 3 games I have, or something like that, where I do the math in my head. Is like, okay, if I pay this much for this lot, what I'm paying for the games I don't own, that's about equal. So I'm not really paying any extra for these other games that I already own, and I get them in and then I clean them up and I resell them. In fact, through buying lots, at one point I had like 6 or 7 NASCAR 99s for the N64, and I really thought about copying Dan Larson's Boba set and just doing a NASCAR set just for no reason. But I was like, nah, I don't really want to waste my limited space on NASCAR games. If it was something more unique and something like if I got a bunch of lots with open backstage assaults, I would keep that as a laugh, because it's wrestling. I love wrestling. Pre-2000 WCW I really enjoyed. So that's something I might keep as a laugh if I got a bunch of those. But yeah, I do recommend buying lots, especially if you're first starting out. You can get a bunch, and generally for inexpensive prices, usually speaking. I have noticed recently a lot of people are overvaluing their lots. Like you'll get a lot of like 5 sports games, which generally if you buy them on their own, they're like $5 or less. If you go to a secondhand store or used video game store or something like that, they'll be like $5 left. If you have like 5 sports titles and like $90, like get a life. But yeah, on those online sites, I'll generally buy lots and just resell the extra copies that I get. So that way, sometimes on some lots, I've actually made my money back selling the extra games that I get, just depending on the kind of deal I got. So that always works out for me. So definitely buy lots when you're starting out, because you can get a bigger collection quicker, especially if you find like used lots of like cheap sports games and common games that don't go for a lot and that people just bundle together. And you can build your collection up pretty quickly there. And also my advice for that, this is just my particular advice, I go for the cheap games early to build a collection, so it's more impressive display back there. And then I will go to collecting the more expensive games. Like I'll tier it up. Like I'll go for like the cheap $5, $10 games first. Then I'll start going for like 15 to 20, 25 to 30. And I think right now the most expensive game I bought was, let's see if I can do it, Earthworm Jim 3D back there. I think I paid $60 for that. I think that's the most expensive N64 game I've purchased. Now the most expensive one I have is Conker's Bad Fur Day. That I did in a trade with a buddy of mine to get that game. So again, you can also do that at swap meets. You can trade games. But yeah, I would start cheap and build your collection, especially if you're going for a complete collection like me. Well, I shouldn't say I started cheap. Originally, I was just collecting games that I loved from the N64 because I had my N64 and I just didn't have a lot of games for it. So I started out getting like Smash Brothers, the AKI wrestling video games, and a few others. And what I mentioned in my cleaning video is my wife, for my birthday one year, picked me up these labels to go with it. And I know you're like, Josh, there's a lot of common games on there. These are greatest hits. These are separate. See, this is more, alphabetical order. You see the checklist coming off. But she picked these up for me, and these became like a checklist for me, and it made me want to get more games. So that's when I really started collecting, because she also got me a few games with these as well. So that's what got me collecting, is like I have these cool stickers to put on my games. So that's what kind of made me think, like, you know what? There's only 200, I want to say 250, 240 US 64 games. So I was like, I can do this. And there's no time set on when I'm going to get it completed. I'm just collecting them as is when I go to like shops and when I'm looking on Macari and I see things. I pick them up as is. But yeah, so when you're on eBay Macari, check the sold, see what things are going for so you don't overpay, and get a bunch of lots. Especially if the games you don't have are about equal in price to what they're charging, and then you have extra games, then you have fodder to sell, and you make some of your money back, and then you can fund your addiction, like I do. And then next up, online retailers. If you're collecting import games like I am, Surugaya, you guys watch the unboxings here. That's where I get a lot of my retro, if not all of my retro Japanese games. And generally speaking, you get the best prices from them because it's directly from the Japanese market. So there's no like upcharge or anything like that, like a lot of US collectors will do. They'll charge you what the game might be worth or what they think it's worth, plus, the cost to import. So you might be paying like $10 plus $20, so it's $30 for a $5 game, kind of thing like that. Where if you go to some place like Surugaya, you can get a lot of games real cheap, like Mario Kart Double Dash. That game goes for close to $100 sometimes here in the U.S. Generally speaking, I see it between $70 and $90. And Surugaya, I picked it up for $15, the Japanese version, because it's more common there. So that's the same thing, like a lot of games that I can play that you don't need a lot of Japanese to play and enjoy, that you can either figure out the menu or Google Translate will help you do it. I buy those from the Japanese market and play them on my Japanese GameCube, and that's how I do it, and it's a lot more fun that way. Plus you can get systems cheaper. Let me move Shawn Michaels so you can see it. My Sega Saturn right there, $40 from Surugaya, where you can get one that's not tested in America for like $90, $100. And considering a lot of the games I'm going to be playing on that Sega Saturn are racing and fighting games, I don't need to speak the language. I just put the buttons in and figure it out. And if I do need something, Google Translate will help me out. And same thing with my Dreamcast. My Dreamcast is modded. It plays American and Japanese games, and the Japanese games I import, mostly fighting and racing games. Again, I don't need to know the language to play those games, and so I can get those games. Like I picked up Marvel vs. Capcom 2 a long time ago for my Dreamcast. I paid, I think, $15 or $20 for it, where if you try to buy the US version, it's over $100. Some places $200 for that game. So saved a lot of money going Japanese. And again, replacing my American Chrono Trigger that got lost when I moved, or it's lost somewhere in a box in this house that I haven't discovered. I bought a complete in-box Chrono Trigger for, I think, $12, $15, where in America, just the card alone is $250. So yeah, so Surugaya, great place to go to get Japanese games, whether for your collection because you're collecting Japanese games, or you speak Japanese and can actually play them. Definitely a place to go to, and I definitely recommend them over doing some of these proxy sites, just because the proxy sites you will get a good deal on a lot of stuff, because you can use, like, I'm sure Surugai's on there, but Hard Off, Macari Japan, Yahoo Auctions Japan, a couple other places, so you have a bigger selection, but then you're paying a ton in shipping, to where Surugaya, if you do it during their free shipping sales, you don't have to pay any shipping. You just pay like 500 yen, which is about $3, $3.50 service fee. So you save a lot of money that way. So I definitely recommend that, doing it that way if you're collecting retro Japanese games. Same with new Japanese games. They do carry new stuff too. I wish I would have realized that before importing the Japanese NES collection, World Championship edition from Amazon Japan. But you live, you learn. Now I know if I want to get a Japanese video game, wait to see if it pops up on Surugaya and get free shipping there, because I would have saved about $20 doing it that way. Next up, retro stores. Retro stores like The Link to the Past, or retro stores like the Tech Exchange in Richmond, also in Roanoke, Virginia. They do have online sales. I'll link that below. And any kind of retro store near you. Second and Charles is another good retro store. Their prices aren't as good as they used to be. Like, you used to be able to get dirt cheap N64 games. Like, the sports titles there would be like $3 or less. In fact, before I modded my N64s, what I would do is I would buy Japanese games that I wanted to play. I would take the backs off cheap American games and put them on the Japanese games. So that way I could play them on my American systems. But can't really do that anymore, because generally speaking, like, the cheapest I've seen games or N64 games at Second and Charles lately, it's been like $10. So, but they still have pretty good, like, the more collectible games, like the higher price games, the ones that are like 15 to 20, 25, 30, $40, they generally have for like the market value. For instance, my local Second and Charles, and I'm probably going to pull the trigger on that this week, has Battle for Naboo, Star Wars. They got it for $24.95. On my research doing the pricing, I've got it at $25, so 5-cent savings there. So they're pretty competitive prices, and a lot of retro stores will be right around that going value for it. Some of them use price charts. Some of them do what I do, and they look at how it's selling for on the internet, and they do like a median price. From what I could tell, from what The Link to the Past does, that's kind of what they do. Just judging by like the games I was looking for and just going off my list. Like, a couple games I thought I didn't have, because I actually would have bought more. I almost was ready to buy like 4 or 5 games, but it turns out I already had those games, so I did not buy them. But when I was going through my list, I could see like, oh yeah, these are priced about what I would pay for this game. Like, this game was, I think, like $1 or $2 less than what I had it averaged out to be, so saved a little money there. The Tech Exchange, kind of the same thing. They've got pretty competitive prices. I did notice on a couple of their games, and you'll notice that retro store, some of the more desirable games might be marked up a little bit. Like Kirby and the Shattered Stars for the N64, I think I've got it marked at about $30 to $40. What I generally see it go for online, they had it for $60, but it's a popular game that a lot of people want. So you'll find that like the popular franchises will be a little bit more pricey at these retro game stores, because they know someone's going to buy it eventually. Again, supply and demand. But overall, like the more common games, they were priced reasonably, like competitively priced. And even some of the more popular games, like I think like Smash Brothers and Mario Party, they had those were priced about what I have them marked on my list. And again, I'm not the be all end all for pricing, but I've done my research and I've got a good idea of like the max I'm going to pay for a game, and they had prices within that range, so not terrible. And that's what you'll find at a lot of these retro stores. You'll find them at about market prices. You're not really going to get a deal. If like the owner's there and it's a small shop, you might be able to negotiate, saying, hey, how about this? You might be able to do some negotiation with those smaller shops, which is always fun. Generally speaking, though, because they're small businesses, if they're priced reasonable for like what I'm willing to pay for it, I won't haggle. I will just pay that price, because again, small businesses, you gotta help them out, because their margins are usually like razor thin. So I won't necessarily try to haggle. But if there's a game I want and I've been looking for it and I haven't really found it, and they've got it priced a little bit more than what I want to pay, maybe I'll see if they'll come down to like my max price. Like, let's say it's $50 and I've got it maxed at $40. I'll see if they'll sell for $40 or $45. A little wiggle room in there. But do it that way. But that's what you'll find mostly at a lot of retro stores. On the more common games, you might save some money, but on the games that people like and the franchises people know, those will generally be about market value. And then we come to yard sales, swap meets, and flea markets. This is where the deals are going to be had, especially if it's not somebody who specializes in that. If it's not a game store coming to these flea markets and swap meets to sell things. If always, what I always do when I'm at like a flea market or swap meet, yard, like my community does yard sales, I'll walk around. But always check out booths that don't have anything that you can see that you readily want when it comes to collecting, because you never know like what they have. They might have bought out a locker or something, and they'll have some video games in there, and they'll just sell for like $5-10 because they don't know what they have. So you might get some real steals in there, especially if you're trying to build a collection, like let's say Super Nintendo, N64, things like that, and you find a bunch of carts and they're just charging like a handful of dollars for them. Just scoop them all up and buy them. But don't act over eager. This, if you get overly excited, they might like, oh, I might have to charge a little extra for these than I was going to. Just say, oh, how much for those? And then you can also haggle at that point. Like they might say like $10 each, and you might be like, well, how about? And there's 10 games there, so that'd be $100. And well, what if I buy the whole thing for 80? So that's where you can find a lot of deals on that. Also, sometimes though, when you're at these flea markets, yard sales, stuff like that, people might horrifically overestimate what they have, and I've noticed that. I'll notice that online sometimes too. People just assume, oh, retro games, those are popular. These are $100 for this and things like that. So, I mean, you can try to haggle like, hey, listen, here's price chart. This is what this game's going for. It's not going for 100. It's worth about 20, and they might be like, oh, okay, $20. Because they, a lot of these times at these things, they don't want to haul the stuff back. They want to sell the stuff, so they're willing to deal and haggle. And you can find some good deals. If someone's only selling video games or collectibles, there's a good chance you're paying market value for that. You might be able to wheel and deal a little bit, but they probably have a good idea of what they have and what it's worth. So that will probably be about market value. But yeah, always kind of check out the tables and bays that don't necessarily have a lot of video games on display. They're displaying like house goods or something like that, because that's that things bread and butter. They're like, I just have these video games, I'll unload them for a song. And I've gotten a lot of deals doing that. In fact, I was at a swap meet last month, and I picked up the remainder of the Four Horsemen. I had Ric Flair, but I did not have Wyndham. I did not have Arn Anderson. I did not have holy shit, Ollie Anderson. No, not Ollie Anderson. Who was the other brainbuster? Damn it, Arn Anderson and Tully. And so I got those three. I got them for either $3 or $5 each. I can't remember, because I got, actually it was less than that, because I got 4 figures, because I got another wrestling figure, but I gave it to my mom, the Funkasaurus Tyrus, because she loves him. But yeah, I got those 4 figures I think for $10, so that was less than $3 a figure. And I know those I don't know, I haven't looked up those figures because I don't really care for the value, but I know they're worth more than $3 each, because they were part of a 4-figure set. And so usually those sets, especially when they're older, they're harder to come by. So yeah, got a great deal there. And because that person didn't specialize in wrestling figures, they just happened to have those, and in really good condition, mind you. So yeah, so if you see things, always kind of like peek in and check, like look around, see if they've got video games, see if they got figures, whatever you're collecting, because that's where you're going to get a lot of great deals on these items. And then kind of lastly, well, actually kind of going with the yard sales, swap meets, flea markets, conventions. Usually speaking, you're going to be paying market price if you go to like a video game convention, comic convention, things like that. But on Sundays, again, they don't want to haul this stuff back. They're willing to make a deal. So if you see something you like and you're willing to gamble that it will still be there Sunday, especially if you got a weekend pass, wait till Sunday. Wait till like after lunch at the convention, and a lot of those people will be willing to deal. I've gotten some good deal on figures and games and items like that, because they don't want to haul this stuff back. So they're willing to unload stuff for cheaper price. And if you buy lots, like if you're not just buying one thing, if you're buying multiple things from these folks, they'll cut a deal too. Like if you buy 4 or 5 things, they might take off $10-15 depending on what the total is, but you'll probably save if you buy more. So if you see several things you like from them, don't be afraid to try to like bundle that sale and save some money. A lot of times vendors will do that for you, even if they're selling stuff at market price. If you buy multiple things, they'll knock a few bucks off for you. And then lastly, you got Facebook Marketplace, Craigslist. Deals can be had there, but I've noticed lately on Facebook Marketplace, a lot of people are overvaluing what they have. they'll be selling stuff for 3-4 times what price charts are saying they're going for. Just because, again, vintage games, vintage toys are popular things, and they think everything's worth a lot of money when it's really not. So those are kind of hard guesses. Like every once in a while, you'll see something pop up that's a great deal, but I will always caution you with these online sellers. If it seems too good to be true, it probably is. Check their seller rating, because I've seen a couple things pop up when I've been looking on Facebook Marketplace for not just collectibles, but also a car for Sean. I'll see a deal that seems too good to be true, and then I'll look at their seller rating, and they've just got bad seller ratings, and people just trash them for numerous reasons. Either it's not what they said it was broken, various things, the person's rude, or like bait and switches and stuff like that. So caution on those things, especially kind of if there's like meetups. Always meet in a public place. I know Chesterfield County here, the police station actually has, at the courthouse, they have a public meeting place where you can schedule meetings to meet with people at the Chesterfield County Courthouse. So you're in a safe, well-lit area where there's a shit ton of cops around. So you don't have to worry too much about your safety. So I would definitely recommend doing it that way if you're doing Facebook Marketplace, but also be very cautious, because sometimes deals can be too good to be true. But also with Facebook Marketplace, you do have community yard sale tabs. Like my community's got a couple of those things, so I'm a member of those, and I look for deals on those. Haven't found anything yet, but one day something will pop up, right? But yeah, that's just kind of like my whole thing on collecting. In summary, collect what you love, man. Collect what makes you happy when you're in your toy room, your video game room, and just kind of swivel around in your chair and you're just looking around. And you're like, I love everything in this room. It's all great. It makes me smile, kind of thing. So that's what I recommend you do for collecting. You can try to collect and flip things. I know I do every once in a while. If I am at the store and I find something rare that I know I can sell, I know a lot of people frown on that, but you got to fund the hobby some way. So sometimes I will pick those up and then resell them for a profit. Same thing with like pre-orders. I'll pre-order one for me, and then I'll pre-order one to sell when it comes in, because when there's those time pre-orders and that's all that you're getting, there will be people who missed out and are willing to pay a good amount of money for. So that's your kind of investment, especially with those pre-orders. You're almost like a store at that point. You're placing your order, you're spending your money, and then you get your item 6 months, 12 months later. So you've already invested that money. So I mean, resell it, try to make a profit back. And it's always, that's kind of something to do. Like I know the WrestleMania New Generation ring and entrance, I bought 2, and selling the second one paid for the first one. So that's kind of how I do a lot of my collecting too. When it comes to those kind of pre-orders, I will pre-order 2, I will sell 1 to pay for the other one. And that's one way to do the collecting. Don't be one of those box switching people though. That's never cool. That's stealing. Don't do that. But yeah, so I mean, that's collecting in general. Collect what you love. Have fun collecting. And then every once in a while you'll turn a profit. Like when we were moving and I had a full basement full of toys and video games, I had to sell a bunch because my game room in the new house is not quite as big as the old basement. So I had to get rid of a bunch of stuff. And a lot of the things that I had collected over the years and had bought for a retail price, doubled, tripled, quadrupled in price. I sold them at market value and made a nice little profit. But that's not always the case. Like I've taken a loss on a lot of things I've sold where, you know, I paid $20 retail for them, and then to make room for new things, I've gone to sell them. I've sold them for like $10, $15. So I mean, I lost money, but a lot of those things were in my collection for years. So I don't feel like I lost money. I don't feel that depreciation in value hurt that bad, because I enjoyed them in my collection. I took photos of them, had fun with them for years, and then I just passed them on to the next collector, kind of thing. So again, if you're not in this for the money, if you're in it for the joy and the fun, you're going to have a blast. If you're in it for the money, you'll have a blast, you'll have heartache, you'll have a blast, you'll have heartache, and you just hope to break even at some point. So as always, thank you for watching the video, especially if you came this far. We're at the 50-minute mark. And enjoy your collecting. Let me know in the comments what you like collecting. How do you like collecting? Are you in box? Are you open? Are you sealed? Are you, I don't care what condition it is. If it makes me smile from my childhood, I'm buying it. Are you video games? Are you toys? Are you coins? Are you stamps? Are you trading cards, Pokemon cards, baseball cards, autographs? Let me know in the comments below. And as always, have a great rest of your day. Bye.